defaulting. Okay. Well, I fixed it. So,
Yeah, I
uh,
think there's a setting in the, if you go to the settings, you can say adjust automatically or manually, as I
uh,
recall.
automatically adjust microphone volume. That's not what I'm looking for. Um,
You turn it off so that you
use separate audio device. Well, I'll try turning that one on. I mean, like deselecting automatically adjust microphone volume. But don't think that's what I'm looking for because I think I'm looking for my speaker volume. Okay.
okay. Anything to report? Can anything catch up?
Um, let's see. Getting myself back into this headspace. Um, let me think. I haven't been able to work on more of the training outline, but we haven't really talked through all of the things that we want to put in together. So I think that this is a time right now for us to just get deep into priorities for the training,
Hmm.
and then I can spend more time like adding that into an outline. Um, I think, yeah, I think we can make some good progress today. I'm gonna need to leave at 10:45,
Hmm.
just
Okay.
like last week. Oh, I guess 2 weeks ago, because last week I had to cancel. And again, I'm sorry I had to cancel. It's just it's very challenging to find time to work on all the projects. And I know I
Hmm.
keep working on this, just when my kids are home. And so when I have multiple projects that are happening at the same time, I have to be very, very selective about which one I focus on each week.
That's
So that's
okay.
actually
Just
causing me
yeah.
some anxiety,
Hmm.
just trying to fit everything in right now. But how are you doing?
Yeah, doing plugging along. I had mentioned I was going to do an interview with Greg Depot,
Oh,
but
that's
last
right.
week it's actually today. I kind of had the date wrong. So after we meet, I think at 12 or so, I think I have it.
Well,
So
I'm excited to hear how that goes.
yeah, so I'm wanting to sort of stress test the holistic empathy definition model. So I'm starting to talk with people about it and post to LinkedIn and to the different discussion with different people who are working on empathy to um, just kind of get their feedback on it. Sort of looking for criticisms. Tell me where we're wrong.
Yeah, I like it.
Anyways, I did send it, the presentation to Greg, and so looking forward to talking to him. I think he's at University UC San Diego now.
I'm gonna look him
Uh,
up again.
and then you had talked about Daryl Cameron, and I just saw that they had done their expanding empathy conference. Did you go to that or?
The one that I went to, I think it was called Expanding. I think the Expanding Empathy is a series of
Mhm.
conversations that he's done with people. But then he had a conference that was a 2 day event, that was hosted at Penn State, but then he also had it streaming on Zoom. And so I attended a lot of that.
Okay.
Yeah, so some good stuff. It was mostly political
Mm.
focus in that one, but it was basically like trying to help two sides of the political spectrum understand each other better. So some good stuff in that.
With empathy or?
Yeah. So that was just part of it. It wasn't specifically like the only thing he allowed people to talk about.
Mhm.
The focus was political dialogue, basically. And a lot of people did talk about empathy. So I thought that was beneficial. I need to reach out to him again because he emailed me last week and asked if I could join his lab for a presentation sometime last week. And then he never responded after that. So I said, yeah, I'd be available like later this week. And then I didn't hear back from him.
I thought, well, I've just been watching the series. There's three. He does a yearly expanding empathy series, and
Uh-huh.
so I think there were three presentations. I've been watching those.
Yeah, I need to watch those as well.
Yeah, there's one. He does. It was the bright and dark side of empathy,
Mhm.
and so I know both of the speakers.
Oh, really?
Fritz Breithaupt, he had done the Dark Side of Empathy book. And I don't know, I talked to him about all this stuff, and it's kind of, I thought, okay, well, maybe I convinced him, I mean, for example, has all these criticisms, and one of the criticisms is empathy leads people to become polarized because you're empathizing with one side or the other, and yeah, so which is exactly what holistic empathy is about, is that, that what he's calling empathizing with one side and the other, I would say, is a deficit of empathy. And he's saying it's empathy and the cause, the problem of empathy. So,
That's
um,
interesting that he's still pushing that. Let's
yeah,
see. Oh, I just pulled up an article, but I guess it's not the same person. What's his name again?
Fritz Breithaupt, I think.
Okay, this looks like it's all of the authors are Chinese, it looks like. So there's the book. Okay, there's the book that has his name on it. Dark Side of Empathy. Yeah, I haven't read that one yet, and I really do need to. Okay, I need to put that on my Audible.
Yeah, well, you can download the audio here. Here's the interview I did with him. I did two-part interview with him.
You are so connected. I love it. Okay.
Well, it's
Yeah, I
15
definitely.
years of, interviewing people ongoing. So,
Yeah, you're doing good work, by the way.
you know,
I don't know if I've said that yet, but I really appreciate the work you're doing.
yeah, it's sort of non-academic, but I'm glad I'm outside the academic sphere myself. So,
Yeah, the more you talk to
and
academics, the more you realize that yikes, you don't want to go there.
well, it's for the
Kind of how I'm feeling.
practitioner side of things. So, anyway, yeah. So anyway, with Daryl, it would be nice to at some point actually have another discussion and kind of run the holistic
Remind
empathy.
me, did you've talked with him before?
I have.
And did you, is it one of these discussions that's online as well?
Yeah, it was quite a while ago. Let me just
Okay.
check. Um, no, yeah, it was really quite a long time ago. I should check in on it. There's the link with him.
Okay.
And then I've moved to a different website. Now it's not showing the videos. There's a link to the video, but the embed is not working for some reason.
Oh, on the website?
Yeah.
Oh, interesting. I get the feeling that he's younger than me. Like in each of these pictures, he just looks very, very young. And then even when I talked to him, I he had like a 3-year-old daughter in the room with him.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, oh, okay, so you're at an earlier stage of life than me. But academically, you're at a much further stage of life.
He's got his whole lab there.
Yeah, that's pretty fun. And he's, I mean, he's a very prolific researcher and he's editor of a journal, like an academic journal. He's the head of all of these different associations. He's doing a lot of good work. Okay, this is interesting. I'm going to put this in the chat. I don't know if it'll let you, oops, access it without like academic library access, but let me know if you can get this to come up. This is another article talking about, it's called The Dark Side of Empathy as well, and it's the role of excessive affective empathy in mental health disorders. And I think that I need to read that because that's something that I really actually do struggle with. And I know I've talked to you about that in the past. Um, but it's cropping up again for me right now. Like that I'm actually struggling with some anxiety, like panic attacks. Um, just harkening back to the murder suicide a few years ago. And it's interesting how you can think that you're past something and then you kind of hit a time where all of a sudden it starts to crop up again. And it's
Mm.
been cropping up for the last few weeks for me. And
So
so
feeling some anxiety and
yes, definitely. And it's like existential dread, that kind of stuff. And so I know that a lot of that came from the fact that during like the aftermath of that, I opened myself up fully empathically to every side of it. And I felt too much. So it wasn't just my grief and my fear and anxiety about it, it was also everybody else's. And so it kind of compounded and made things a lot harder for me. So I need to read more about this, but then also, so I feel like I need to understand this perspective on it, on why it actually can be detrimental. Um, because I feel like I was empathizing with every side, and then my mental health went down.
mhm.
So I find that somewhat challenging, especially when we're advocating for more empathy. And I'm just curious what your thoughts are on that, like
Mhm.
from a mental health perspective for the individual who's engaging in the holistic empathy.
Yeah, I think the empathy circle again is kind of the starting point for that for personal support. So to we're just in our board meeting just before this and talking about to create empathy circles for personal support. So every week you've got your group that you go to and you can share those feelings of
Mm.
anxiety. So I know when I have anxiety and I have an empathy buddy to share, I can feel the anxiety kind of in my chest, and then being able to share it kind of
It lifts
helps
up. Yeah, and
dissipate
I can
it.
feel that right now, just having shared that with you and you like validating where I'm coming from, the tightness that's right here that I feel that's like the dread. Like I have the way that I experience it is like the dread of the anxiety starts right here.
Mm-hmm.
And then talking about it with you, not talking about it with everybody, because not everybody has the same empathic abilities that you do, but I do feel it releasing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
So
so you feel it release in with it, like with when I actively listen, am present with you, and you're able to share it. That you can actually right now you can feel it being released.
mhm.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, and I appreciate that about you. I really appreciate that you have cultivated this skill set, and it's not just I don't know, I can tell every time you go into empathic listening mode that it's so natural for you to do that. And I think that that's probably because you've spent the past 15 years honing this skill
Yeah.
and not just talking about it, but practicing it. So I think that's what a lot of people lack, like especially in academia. Like we can talk and talk and talk about it, about the philosophy of it, but we don't
Yeah,
actually.
maybe we could. I mean, I know you're pretty busy. I'd be good with like an hour or hour and a half empathy circle to talk about just like what's happening personally. Get a couple more people who want to, and then be thinking of it like exploring it as a modality that the structure of that could be sort of a alternative to one-on-one therapy.
Mhm.
I see the empathy circle could be an alternative. So I'd be up for that if you could talk about whatever anxieties are, and anyway, it's just personal, what's personally happening, in our lives.
Yeah, I think it's really powerful, especially as we're getting into more of the cerebral side of this, keeping it more like going up to theoretical level. Like it's important for us to continually ground it in the
Hmm.
practical. Um, so I think that that would be beneficial personally, but then also for the sake of the work that we're
Hmm.
doing, I think it would be really, really beneficial.
Yeah, if you want to have a time for that, I know you're pretty busy, so it's hard to find the spot, to do
Yeah.
that. But
Well, I
I'm
wonder if we
open.
could just maybe next week instead of this meeting
Hmm.
talking about the definitions, we could dive into that.
Okay.
And I could make sure that somebody else is able to pick up my girls from school. Oh, you know
Hmm.
what? They don't have school that day. So that's perfect.
Okay. Yeah, let's do
So
that then. It's just personal, what's happening, what's personally alive for you in the moment. I had wanted to do an empathy circle too, like on Saturdays. I've been keep talking about it, but it's like, what is your experience in the empathy circle in the moment? We
mm,
go and we just talk about. So it's kind of exploring different aspects of the experience. So, but
yeah, I like that a lot. The meta approach that takes to it because we're experiencing it, but then we're also talking about what we're
mhm,
experiencing,
right.
and then it's like multi-layered within that. So I like that.
Mhm. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, so we'll do
So
that next week.
do you have some people in mind that you would want to
Hmm.
invite to join an empathy circle with us, or do you want me to invite people? How do you want to do that?
Yeah, I can bring one person if you want to bring one person. Do you think you have someone?
Okay, I can give it
Or
some thought, and it would be basically just talk about whatever's alive in you.
yeah, just
Okay.
mhm.
Yeah, I will give it
Whatever's
some
on your
thought.
mind, whatever you're feeling, just one good thing is, what are feelings of concern, anxiety, stress, or worry that you have? That's always a
Yeah.
good gateway topic. It's kind of a bit more specific to getting to those feelings.
Um, I wonder if there's any, um, I've thought about this a few times that I see the benefit of this group setting where it's not with a therapist, but I also see the benefit of one-on-one therapy. And I'm just curious if it would what this would look like if we had a therapist in the room with us who was participating, like not as like the role of like you are my therapist, but I would love to have one of my therapist friends come and experience it together with
That'd
us.
be good. Yeah.
Um, I have I have a really good friend, one of my best friends from high school, that she's a therapist. I just wonder if she would be available next week.
That'd be very interesting to have some
I would
therapists
love to
take
get her
part.
take on it.
Hmm.
Because yeah, she tends to be kind of more prescriptive. Like I know the answers, I know how to fix your problems, but I would love to see how she does in
Hmm.
this kind of setting where each person has the opportunity to just talk about their own experience, rather than her just focusing on fixing other people's problems, like
Hmm.
talking about what's happening inside of her as well.
And how long do you want to go for? It's like,
An hour and a half, do you want to do
yeah,
that?
I think hour and a half is a good kind of a minimum, I think is.
Okay. Um, yeah, I will invite her. It's going to depend on her, her client schedule. This event only. Okay. So I've got it in my schedule for an hour and a half, and I will let you know if she can come or not.
Okay. Well, with on that same topic, you were asking about kind of taking in. Oh, I was just kind of browsing on the internet, came across some stuff from Carl Jung, and he had actually talked about that too. Uh, I
About what
was
exactly? Sorry.
It's about empathy and I think boundaries, and he I'm not sure if now I'm starting you don't know if this stuff is real anymore because with AI and everything, that he talked about
Right.
empaths, uh, and kind of that state where you take in all everyone's feelings, and he was talking about the importance of having boundaries of self other, that that the stuff that's coming in is not yours, the emotions, that they're somebody else's. And I think with the empathy circle, when you reflect what somebody's saying and reflect their emotions, it helps with the self-other distinction.
Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah, I think you're right because when you put words to it, it helps you to wrap your brain around it more fully. Anytime you're just kind of experiencing a flood of thoughts and emotions that, I mean, I was just experiencing this like right before our meeting where I was praying actually, and I decided to pray out loud, which I usually just pray inside my mind, but I decided to pray out loud. And there was a torrent of stuff happening in my mind, but I had to focus it into actual words that could come out of my mouth. And so I think that's very similar to what we're talking about here, where if you can put words to it, it actually changes the experience for you.
yeah.
So I think there's a lot of benefit to that. I'm going to look into more of what he said and see if I can find it in, the academic archives so we can
Yeah,
parse
I
out
don't know
what
much
real was
about
not.
him, about Jung. I had never studied him. It's just I stumbled across it, and I found it interesting that I did an AI search too on him, like his
Okay.
philosophy. What did Carl Jung say about empathy? And uh,
Huh.
it
I'm curious. What did you find? Like what quotes did you find?
he had talked about Einfühlung, the original German
Uh-huh.
word, and the sense I got was he was talking about that flood of emotion, exactly what you're talking about, the flood of different feelings from others, and a sense of getting lost in it, and the importance of having a sense of self, the ego, having an ego, I think it was, and having sort of boundaries of self, other,
Hmm.
a distinction. That was sort of my quick take on it. I don't, you know, which to me is what I agree with. Is
Yeah.
and Carl Rogers talked about self-other distinction, that the empathy is about the self-other. So getting flooded is in others' emotions, feelings, kind of losing yourself is actually it inhibits empathy. Yeah.
Yeah, I agree with that. And I think that that's something that we need to lean into with the definitions, like in the training, because um, I thought I knew a lot about empathy. And so I thought that just opening myself up completely was going to be a good thing. And because I know I've said this before, even back in like high school, I wrote it down that empathy was one of my values,
Mm.
that I deeply valued empathy. And so, that was 25 years ago that I wrote that down. Um, and, but I don't think that I fully understood what it was I was saying that I valued. And I think that it's important for us to add that in. Like, if we're talking about empathy, some people are going to understand that we are advocating for opening yourself up empathically to everything that everybody has to offer, good or for ill, right? And so if somebody is berating you, let's say that you open yourself up empathically to somebody who is telling you that you are worthless, does that mean you start to believe that about yourself
Hmm.
because you're being empathic, right? And I don't think that that is, obviously that's not healthy for your sense of self-esteem, your sense of self-worth. And furthermore, anything dangerous that somebody else might believe, like that it's okay to murder someone, for example, if you're being empathic in the way that a lot of people understand it, it means to them potentially that you open yourself up to believing that that's okay. And so that's just where I keep coming back to. At what point are we talking about empathy, and at what point are we talking about letting go of your sense of self and letting go of things that are important to you, things that you value, and what are your own thoughts and emotions, and just fully just allowing everything to permeate you. So I think that's an important thing for us to
Hmm.
lean into
Yeah,
it.
that's very core. And
And maybe adding in some of these quotes from people like Carl Rogers and Carl Jung, could be really beneficial to help people to see, oh, this isn't just these two people's idea of what empathy should be, but there are philosophers
Mhm.
and psychologists who back this up as well.
Yeah.
Um, I'm gonna I'm gonna put that in to make sure that we focus on that. So what I had in this brief overview of work of weeks 3 and 4 of the training, where week 3 would be more talking about like real like what how do I say this? Like reevaluating the philosophical underpinnings of empathy, and how our experiencing, like as we're going through the training, we're experiencing empathy together as a group with the empathy circle, and also with that, that picture that I was showing you that we could talk through and like telling people this is what you're experiencing right now is empathy. Um, as we get into week 4, I was thinking of talking about, when do you put a cap on that, right? Like, so at what point do you want to close down your sense of self and like put borders around that so that you don't turn out to be an empath that has no sense of self?
Hmm.
So would that be something that you think would be beneficial?
Um, it's within the context of the empathy circle. How do we, talk about it with it, not with the empathy circle? Yeah, within the context of the empathy circle and the holistic empathy. Um, so, I mean, that's like talking about, like you're talking about boundaries, I think, right?
Yeah.
And that's kind of going into depth in terms of the boundaries, I mean, with the empathy circle, creating those boundaries. I mean, yeah. So hmm, maybe that would be something. Well, let's see. I mean, yeah, I'm kind of into. I'm just thinking about it. Thinking of the blocks to empathy.
Mhm.
There's a whole body of work about the blocks to empathy, which are kind of which I think are really helpful to kind of start differentiating. You saw that list, right? That
Yeah,
we
and I was
had of.
thinking week 2 we would get into the blocks to empathy, and just go through everything that you've listed on the website that are those blocks. But go on.
But well, with those blocks to empathy, there could be gone into depth. Going into depth of those would be a 10-week course, in the
Yeah.
sense that you can explore like uh, you can explore the yeah. I'm trying to think of it, kind of an outline here. Uh, yeah, I was getting. Let's see, because there's the blocks to empathy, and losing yourself would be a block to empathy, right? So it comes
True.
under the heading of blocks to
Yeah, you're
empathy,
right.
versus just something that's kind of, I know it's personally important to you, so you're kind of bringing it, I think, maybe forward to this, but I think within the context of here are these blocks to empathy, and uh, losing sense of self would be a block to empathy, or it would even come into emotional contagion, or so anyway, it'd be a whole category of losing a sense of self, and why and how does that block empathy. So
Yeah, I mean, we could spend weeks on that
yeah.
topic alone. It's true. And so maybe rather than having a separate week that is focusing on those boundaries, that falls within the heading of blocks. So
Yeah.
then are you thinking that maybe 2 weeks on blocks to empathy would be more appropriate rather than just 1 week?
Well,
And we could
right
spend a
now
little bit more
there's
time?
right now, yeah, right now it's like with the presentation, it's like uh what is the model. Here's the model. So well, it actually starts with the intention. We want to create a culture of empathy, and to do that, we have to have clarity on our terms.
Mhm.
So we have the underlying intention, and then here's, did all those different uh, criticisms of empathy. There's a lot of criticisms of empathy, and then just saying that it seems it's a definitional problem. I'm almost sure that any of those people who are talking about the blocks, I mean, criticisms of empathy by having a clear definition of this is what we mean by empathy, just like I did with Kevin, that guy Waldman or whatever. Uh, if they're willing to dialogue, that we can come to some kind of mutual understanding. And so anyway, I just kind of had the criticism, which we don't need to go into, and then it was here's the model, and then here's the most common model, which was the
Affective.
affective cognitive empathy, just to kind of address that. So it's kind of, I don't know what did you, if there's the cognitive affective model, and I tried to break it down into the parts. I don't know what you think of the different parts there. Like the cognitive empathy is perspective taking, imagination, and then they say, well, it's
Even a
without feel,
cognitive understanding
yeah,
of emotion,
without
but not
feeling,
without
yeah,
feeling. Yeah.
and so it's kind of just breaking that down and then kind of saying that this is what are the problems with that, because that's what
Right.
people are going to be. Uh, so it's a
Attacking.
bit of a higher level picture of the definitions, right? Before we kind of dig into the details, because we want to give people a framework to plug in when things come up, when insights. How do you plug it into the model, into the definition model? Where does it sort of fit in? And so being clear on what that model is, and then yeah, from there, what I was going to go into next was some of the criticisms of empathy and how to address those. So and so maybe what's the list of criticisms? And one of
Yeah.
the big criticisms is that it seems to come up a lot, at least in the political ones, is empathy leads to um, victimhood. People being victims, and
Because that's empathizing with one side and only the victim side.
right. And so to
Um,
be able to address that, and to be, and so that's kind of where I want to go into next. So at least that's the outline of the presentation. So do we do the training, to sort of follow the the outline of the presentation, or I'd be a little hesitant to go too deep into just into without having a bigger picture, right? At least that's, yeah. So I guess I'm kind of trying to figure out how to merge what you're.
well, pull up the document that I shared with you
Do
because
you have the link again?
I just pulled it. I put it in the chat for you
Oh, okay.
because I have in week one talking about these high level things. So after the welcome and the intro and the picture, so then we would talk about like how do the individuals in the group define empathy. So like before getting into all of the academic definitions, they just share what they understand the term to mean. And then right after that is talking through all of these. So this is on the second page, if you can see that, where it says, how do researchers define empathy?
Okay.
And so then we would get into like what you're talking about, the cognitive and affective empathy and emotion contagion, emotional or what's the word, empathic concern, all of that kind of stuff. So just talking through, and I just listed a few of them. Obviously, we would want to go into a lot more depth than that.
Mm-hmm.
And then I think it's important to like go back to where we wrote down the definitions that people shared, the people in the group shared, and say, how does this map onto
Mm-hmm.
these more academic definitions that people have? Do they align, and where do they not align? So, like your lived experience with empathy, is it what they're talking about in academia? Because in a lot of cases, I think it's not the same thing as they're talking about. Another thing that, as you were talking about cognitive and affective and empathic concern, I had a light bulb moment that I haven't had before. It seems like the rational compassion approach that Paul Bloom is advocating for. That seems like what he wants is cognitive empathy and empathic concern without the affective empathy. He wants to leave that out of it. So I think that that's an interesting little insight that that he maybe he's going off of that model, that without having said it forthright, he doesn't think that any of the emotional part of it should be what we think of as appropriate use of empathy, because he seems to be really against the affective empathy. Have I understood that correctly?
Yeah. He's against the sort of the emotional contagion or the state matching, and that's
Right.
what he's calling affective, maybe affective empathy. I mean, there's the other thing is just getting away from the whole affective and cognitive empathy model, because I think like when if we're having an empathy circle and I'm listening to you, I'm listening to the wholeness of you, the feelings, your thought, how your thoughts connect to each other, what feelings, you were talking about anxiety, where does the anxiety come from? What are you doing to deal with the anxiety? There's a wholeness of you. So uh, it's, I'm trying to get away from the whole affective cognitive model saying that we're just listening to the person. And,
Mhm.
as I mentioned in the presentation, Rogers never talked about cognitive affective,
Yeah, that's super
empathy.
interesting, especially since a lot of what you're doing is really dovetailing off of the work.
Yeah, it's kind of like the next step on Rogers, and somehow I don't know. It got into the academia, and Rogers had a lot of problem with other academics, kind of criticizing his work, but it somehow this affective and cognitive empathy kind of arose. And I'm not quite sure why. Maybe it's from throughout sort of the history of the word empathy. There was a group that is, back in the early, 1900, whatever. There was, they're saying empathy is a thought process, and then others were talking about it being emotional. And it was sort of as I understand, remember, kind of a back and forth about it. And it's like they almost like kind of merged the two, saying that, well, there's two parts to it.
Hmm.
But again, we're starting with the dualistic, notion. And so,
Well, I'm curious for you when you're engaging in this active listening and you're reflecting back to me
mhm.
that you can tell that I'm feeling anxiety. It seems like you're keeping a rational, compassion approach to it. You want me to know that you're present.
Hmm.
You want me to know that you understand where I'm coming from, but you're not feeling my anxiety.
But I sense your anxiety. I can feel just through mirror neurons. I have a sense of the anxiety. I can, sort of sense your body, energy, and I can feel. Oh, there's sort of this sense of. So it's both. It's both at the same time, and I don't know
Interesting.
how you
Yeah, how do
even
you separate those two
differentiate
out or
separate. It's
what?
like, yeah, it's like, well, here's 10% is affective and 90% is cognitive. It's so intertwined. And I remember even Marco Iacoboni, we were talking about definitions. He said the feelings is two sides of the same coin,
Hmm.
and I don't know, what I would take that as meaning is, yeah, it's so intertwined. Yeah, I don't know how you can.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree with you. I'm just thinking about I just took a class last fall called Cognitive and Affective Processes.
Mhm.
And we never really talked about them as separate things. So I think I would like to reach out to the professor of the class and just get his take on this as to why he thinks that they are separated out in the literature as two separate things when they are very much intertwined with each other.
Mhm.
I'm sure that he'll have insights that maybe you and I haven't thought of, because this is something that he focuses his research in this area, and he teaches this class every semester. And so I'm sure he's had thoughts about this that we haven't thought of. So I'm going to reach out to him, and we'll see what he has to say about it.
Yeah, so with the affective and cognitive, I wanted to kind of give people at least here's this model that's out there, and everybody, there's people talking about it, and the academics are talking about it, which means that the writers, people who write, popular stuff, they're kind of taking that and they're writing about it. So you're going to be coming across that and I'm basically saying just throw it all out because it's a mess. And
I agree. I agree that there's in a lot of ways, I think we should just throw a lot of this out and start over.
yeah, that's what it's at least give people the tools to, throw it out and just
Yeah.
start with.
I even think that we should throw the term empathy out
Mm,
because it has caused so many problems. I love the word because of what it means to me, but I know I've mentioned this before when it's a term that is used in so many different ways to mean all of these different things, it becomes more of a stumbling block than something that brings people together and helps people actually empathize with each other because we have a different definition
yeah.
of what the word means. And so I like what I honestly am advocating for is that we just separate it out into the different components that people are using it for. If you're using it to mean emotion contagion, you should be using the term emotion contagion.
Hmm. Yeah.
If you're using it to mean active listening, then you should actually say active listening rather than empathy because it's not the same thing. They are two separate things that happen. Like you can actively listen without being an empath and being flooded with all of everybody else's emotions. And you can, like vice versa, you can take on all of the emotions without actively listening to what the person has to say about those emotions or their lived experience, their actual worldview, and you're just flooded with emotions, right? So I think that it's actually slowing us down and it's keeping us from being able to have a productive conversation about it. But that's not going to happen. I don't think that it's ever going to happen that we'll actually get people to
Yeah.
stop
Well,
using the
the
term.
problem with is that every word becomes contested. I mean,
Yes.
if you dig into it, so I remember Dan Batson, he said, everybody defines it differently. Be clear on your definition and stick to it. So that's
Yeah.
what we're trying to do here is this is what we're using and we're going to stick to it. And
Yeah, I agree with that. And I think that at the very beginning of our training, we'll want to make sure that we're clear about that
yeah.
and then continually refer back to that.
Hmm.
As we explore all of the other definitions, we can say that this is being used as a definition of empathy. And we want to make sure that it's clear that that's not the way we're defining the word.
Yeah.
And it can just be something that I think that if we can like make that the main takeaway from
That
the
would be a
training,
lot. Yeah. And
I
be
think that
clear
that would
on
be
that.
really
Yeah. That's a
beneficial
good
because
point. Mhm.
if we're not clear on that, then we come away with a lot of confusion of like, yeah, you mentioned this definition of holistic empathy, but it was just one of 50 different definitions you shared with us. So we can't differentiate what's more important to you. So yeah, just solidifying that at the beginning and throughout the whole thing will be
And
important.
we're doing it because we want it for practical purposes, because the empathy circle is something that's highly practical, right? So it's like we want to be able to practically define the term that we're using in this in practical terms. And I mean, I saw the discussion with Fritz and Daryl and I can't remember her name right now, the other person in it, but it was like a mess. It was like they were. It's like you know all these things that Fritz was bringing into his criticisms of empathy were just like muddying the water. It was just like I couldn't see a forward motion. Like start creating something that's uh, productive. Because
Yeah.
they're caught up in the definitional. And with the empathy circle, we have something that, and we'll do that next week, is, it's something that is beneficial to people. If people get some benefit out of it, one of the speakers at the next empathy summit, Alyssa, she said, She had an empathy class, student class that she'd put together at UC Berkeley that we had worked with, and she said the empathy circle was something that changed her life. So, and she's going to be talking about that at the next empathy summit. So, it's something that it makes an impact and improves your life. So
Yeah, I
and,
can't say that any one of the academic conversations I've had about empathy has changed my life.
mhm.
It's only in the practicality of it that it actually benefits lay people.
Yeah.
And we need to keep that as our focus. It's all about
Yes.
practicality.
Okay. Yeah. I know you got to go. So.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, look
I'll see you
forward to
next
our
week. And
circle next week, and I'll
yeah, I'll
find
let you know if my
someone.
friend can come or not.
Okay, great. Look
Okay,
forward
take
to it.
care.